Hello, everyone. Let me ask you something deeply personal right now, and I want you to sit with this question for a moment before we dive in. When was the last time you made a decision, a real, important, life-altering decision that was entirely, 100% yours? Not influenced by what your parents expected, not shaped by what your coworkers might think, not filtered through the lens of what your social media followers would say, not adjusted to avoid conflict with a friend, a partner, or a neighbor. When did you last choose you, without apology, without guilt, and without the crushing weight of other people's opinions pressing down on your chest like a stone? If you're struggling to answer that question, you are not alone. In fact, you are part of the overwhelming majority of human beings walking this planet who have unknowingly handed over the remote control of their own lives to the people around them, family members, colleagues, strangers on the internet, and sometimes even people they've never met. You have been living your life on someone else's channel, watching someone else's program, and wondering why you feel so exhausted, so unfulfilled, and so deeply disconnected from joy. And today, right now, in this moment, that ends. Welcome to one of the most important conversations you will ever have with yourself, because that's exactly what this is. This isn't just content you're consuming. This is a mirror being held up to your life. This is a wake-up call wrapped in compassion. This is the permission slip nobody ever gave you. The permission to stop caring so much about what everyone else thinks, to protect your peace like it is your most sacred possession, to claim the kind of freedom that doesn't come from money or status or success, but from the deeply liberating decision to simply stop letting the world's noise drown out your own voice. Over the next several minutes, we're going to go deep. We're going to talk about why we care so much in the first place, because understanding the root is how you pull out the weed. We're going to explore the very real, measurable cost of over-caring, not just emotionally, but physically, professionally, and spiritually. We're going to look at real people, people in New York and London, in Seoul and Singapore, in Manchester and Mumbai, who were trapped in the same cycle you might be trapped in right now, and how they found their way out. And most importantly, we're going to give you a concrete, actionable, honest roadmap for building a life where your peace is non-negotiable. So, take a breath. Let's begin. Part 1. Why do we care so much in the first place? Before we can stop caring too much, we have to understand why we started caring so much in the first place. Because this isn't a personality flaw. This isn't weakness. This isn't something wrong with you. Caring what others think is, at its core, a survival mechanism that has been hardwired into your brain over thousands of years of human evolution. Think about it from a historical perspective. For our ancestors living in tribal communities across Europe, Asia, and America, being rejected from the group was not just emotionally painful, it was a death sentence. You needed your tribe to survive. You needed their approval to eat, to stay warm, to be protected from predators. The brain learned, over generations, to treat social rejection with the same alarm bells as physical pain. The part of your brain that processes social exclusion, the anterior cingulate cortex, is literally the same part that processes physical pain. That's not a metaphor, that's neuroscience. So when you feel that gut-wrenching anxiety before posting something on Instagram, or that cold sweat when you're about to disagree with your boss, or that overwhelming need to explain and justify your choices to your parents, your brain is, in some primal way, trying to keep you safe. It's reading the situation as danger. The tribe might reject us. The problem is that we are no longer living in caves. We are no longer dependent on a single tribe of 30 people for our survival. You live in Los Angeles or London or Tokyo or Singapore. You have access to billions of people, hundreds of communities, countless opportunities to belong. The cost of one person's disapproval is not your life, but your nervous system doesn't know that. It hasn't caught up yet. And this evolutionary tendency has been supercharged, weaponized really, by modern society. Parents in the United Kingdom grew up being told to keep a stiff upper lip and not make a fuss, internalizing a deep discomfort with standing out or being too much. In many East Asian cultures, from South Korea to Japan to China, the concept of collective harmony is so deeply embedded in cultural values that personal desires are routinely sacrificed on the altar of family expectation. A young woman in Seoul might abandon her dream of becoming a graphic designer because her parents believe only medicine or engineering will bring honor to the family. A man in Singapore might spend 20 years in a career that suffocates him because leaving would mean admitting failure, and failure in his community is not just personal, it is familial, it is cultural. In the United States, despite the celebrated mythology of rugged individualism and the American dream, social media has created an unprecedented culture of performance and comparison. Americans are caught in a paradox, told they should be free to be themselves while simultaneously being ranked, rated, liked, and judged every moment of every single day. The result? Studies from the American Psychological Association show that anxiety and people-pleasing behaviors are at an all-time high, particularly among millennials and Gen Z. So whether you grew up in Birmingham or Boston, in Bangkok or Beijing, the pressure to perform, to please, to conform, to be palatable, to be acceptable, it is everywhere. And most of us absorbed it so early, so completely, that we don't even realize it's happening. We mistake other people's expectations for our own desires. We confuse people-pleasing with kindness. We call our over-caring being considerate, when really it's fear wearing a very convincing disguise. Part 2. The real cost of caring too much. Now, let's talk about what this actually costs you, because I want you to feel the weight of this. I want you to truly understand what is at stake every single day that you continue to live your life through the eyes of others. It costs your health. Emma, a 34-year-old marketing manager from Manchester, was described by everyone around her as the most dependable person in the room. She never said no. She took on extra projects at work because she didn't want to disappoint her boss. She organized every social event because she didn't want her friends to feel let down. She called her mother every day, even when she was exhausted, because the guilt of missing a call was worse than the exhaustion itself. On the outside, Emma looked like someone who had it all together. On the inside, she was running on fumes. By 34, she had developed chronic migraines, a diagnosed anxiety disorder, and a persistent feeling that can only be described as hollowness, like she was everywhere for everyone except present in her own life. Her doctor looked at her blood pressure readings and said simply, "Something has to change." Emma had been so busy caring about everyone else that she had essentially stopped caring for herself. This is not a fictional character. Versions of Emma exist in every city, in every country, in every workplace. Research published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine has consistently linked people-pleasing behaviors and chronic stress from social approval seeking with elevated cortisol levels, weakened immune function, increased risk of cardiovascular disease, and significantly higher rates of depression. Caring too much isn't just emotionally exhausting, it is literally making you sick. It costs your relationships. Here's the painful irony that nobody talks about. The more you try to please everyone, the less genuine your relationships become. When you never say what you truly think,
when you agree with everything just to avoid conflict, when you perform a version of yourself designed specifically for other people's consumption, you rob those people of the chance to actually know you, and you rob yourself of the experience of being truly known. James, a 28-year-old software developer from Austin, Texas, spent 3 years in a relationship that was essentially a performance. He agreed with his girlfriend's opinions even when he disagreed. He pretended to love activities he found boring. He never expressed his own needs because he was convinced that expressing needs was selfish, and being selfish meant unlovable. The relationship eventually ended, not because of a dramatic fight, but because his girlfriend looked at him one evening and said quietly, "I feel like I've never really met you." James was devastated, but somewhere beneath the devastation, he recognized the truth.
He had been so focused on being who she needed him to be that he had never shown up as himself. You cannot be deeply loved if you're not deeply known, and you cannot be deeply known if you're constantly hiding. It costs you your potential. Every time you don't apply for the job because you're worried people will think you're reaching too high, you lose. Every time you don't start the business because your family thinks it's too risky, you lose. Every time you don't speak up in the meeting because you don't want to seem arrogant, you lose. Every time you don't publish the book, launch the channel, sign up for the class, move to the new city, end the relationship, begin the relationship because of what someone else might think, you lose. Dr. Bronnie Ware, an Australian palliative care nurse who spent years working with people in their final weeks of life, documented the most common regrets of the dying in her now famous book. The number one regret? I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Not, I wish I'd worked harder. Not, I wish I'd been more successful. But I wish I had been brave enough to be myself. That regret is being built right now, today, every time you shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort zone. Part 3. The difference between caring and overcaring. Now, this is an essential distinction, and I want to make it crystal clear because the goal here is not to turn you into someone who is callous, cold, or indifferent to the world. Caring is one of the most beautiful dimensions of being human. Empathy, compassion, consideration, these are virtues. The world desperately needs more of them. The problem is not that you care. The problem is the way you care and what you're giving your caring energy to. There is a profound difference between caring about someone and needing their approval. There is a profound difference between considering someone's feelings and allowing their feelings to govern your entire life. There is a profound difference between being kind and being compliant out of fear. Healthy caring sounds like, I love this person and their opinion matters to me. I'll consider what they've said and make the best decision I can for my life. Overcaring sounds like, I cannot make this decision until I know they approve of it. And if they don't approve, I'll change my decision, even if it makes me miserable. Healthy caring is an act of love directed outward. Overcaring is an act of anxiety directed inward. One expands you. One imprisons you. Think of Priya, a 26-year-old woman from Leicester with Indian heritage who was accepted into a prestigious creative writing program at a London university. It was her dream, the thing she had worked toward for years, but her parents, who had sacrificed enormously to give her opportunities they never had, believed writing was not a stable career. They wanted her to pursue accounting. Priya cared deeply about her parents. She understood their sacrifices. She honored their love. But after many difficult conversations, she also recognized that honoring their love did not require sacrificing her purpose. She enrolled in the writing program. It was one of the most difficult decisions she ever made. It was also one of the most important.
Today, 3 years later, Priya is a published author with a growing readership. Her parents, slowly, then suddenly, became her loudest supporters. The story doesn't always end this neatly, but this much is always true. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot give your best to the people you love when you are living a life that is slowly draining the life out of you. Part 4. How to Stop Caring Too Much, the Practical Roadmap. All right, we've done the deep work, the why, the what it costs. Now let's talk about the how. And I'm going to be very direct with you here. This is not a process that happens overnight. It is a practice. It is a daily, intentional, sometimes uncomfortable practice. But every single day you show up for it, your world gets a little lighter. Step 1. Audit your energy. You only have a finite amount of mental and emotional energy each day. Think of it like a battery. The question is not whether you will spend that energy. You will. The question is what you are spending it on. For 1 full week, I want you to carry a small notebook or use the Notes app on your phone, and every time you feel anxious, guilty, or stressed because of what someone might think, write it down. Note the situation, the person, and the emotional weight it carried. At the end of the week, review your list. You will likely find 2 things. First, that a large portion of your anxiety is directed at the same 2 or 3 people or situations. Second, that many of the things you were anxious about either never happened or happened and the consequences were far smaller than you feared. This exercise alone, simply making the invisible visible, is enormously powerful. You cannot change what you cannot see. Step 2. Define your inner circle of opinion. Not all opinions are created equal. This is a radical but liberating truth. The opinion of your best friend of 15 years, someone who knows your full story, who has sat with you through your darkest moments, who has no agenda other than your well-being, carries weight. The opinion of a colleague who barely knows your name, or a stranger on Twitter, or a relative you see once a year who has never asked you a single meaningful question about your life, that opinion carries none. Brené Brown, the renowned research professor and author from Houston, Texas, teaches a concept she calls the Square Squad. She instructs people to think about who in their lives, if they wrote a message that said, "I'm struggling, I need you," would show up. For most people, that list is very small. It might be 2 people, it might be 5, it might just be 1. Brown's point, and it is a brilliant one, is that your Square Squad is the only group whose opinions about your life deserve your genuine consideration. Everyone else is noise. Make your list, put it somewhere visible, and the next time you spiral into anxiety about what someone thinks of you, first ask yourself, are they on that list? Step 3. Get comfortable with discomfort. One of the most important truths about personal freedom is that it doesn't feel comfortable at first. When you start saying no, people will be surprised. Some will be annoyed. Some will push back. When you start making decisions based on your own values rather than external approval, there will be awkward silences and uncomfortable conversations. When you stop performing and start being genuine, some people who loved the performance will step away, and that will hurt. This discomfort is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It is a sign that you're doing something different. And different, when you've been doing the same thing for years, always feels strange before it feels right. A practical way to build this tolerance is what therapists sometimes call discomfort exposure, deliberately doing small things that risk mild disapproval. Order the food you actually want instead of something you think sounds better to others. Wear the outfit that feels like you, even if it's unexpected. Express a genuine opinion in a low-stakes conversation. Decline one invitation this week without offering an elaborate excuse. These small acts of authenticity are like reps at the gym. They build the muscle, And like the gym, the results are not immediate, but they are inevitable. Step 4. Rewire the narrative. Much of what we fear about other people's judgments exists entirely in our own minds. This is not dismissive, it's actually hopeful. Because if the prison is partly in your head, then so is the key. Cognitive behavioral therapy, widely practiced across the US, UK, and increasingly across Asia, introduces a technique called cognitive reframing, the practice of actively challenging the automatic thoughts that fuel anxiety. When you catch yourself thinking, "Everyone will think I'm stupid if I say that," pause and ask, "Is that actually true? All of everyone? Do I have evidence for that? What's the most likely realistic outcome? What would I tell my best friend if they were having this thought?" You will find almost universally that the narrative your mind creates is dramatically worse than reality. The human brain is a catastrophizing machine. It is designed to prepare for worst-case scenarios. Your job is to be the voice of reason that counters it. Replace "they're going to judge me" with "some people may have opinions, and that is entirely their right and entirely their problem." Replace "I need their approval to feel okay" with "my sense of worth comes from within, not from a vote." These are not affirmations you recite mindlessly. They are beliefs you argue yourself into, evidence by evidence, moment by moment. Step 5. Build a life that fills you. Here is something we don't say enough. One of the most powerful cures for overcaring about others' opinions is being so deeply
Invested in your own life that you simply don't have the bandwidth for it. When you have a purpose that lights you up, when you have relationships that truly nourish you, when you have a creative outlet or a physical practice or a spiritual discipline that grounds you, the noise of external judgment gets quieter. Not because you've become numb to it, but because you've become anchored to something more real. Yuki, a 41-year-old woman from Osaka, Japan, spent most of her 30s consumed by the opinions of others, her mother-in-law, her colleagues, the other parents at her children's school. She was perpetually exhausted from managing everyone's perception of her. A health scare at 39 stopped her in her tracks. During her recovery, she picked up pottery, something she'd loved as a child but abandoned because it wasn't practical. She started going to a local studio 3 mornings a week. Something extraordinary happened. Not only did the craft itself bring her joy, but being around other people who were deeply absorbed in creating something beautiful reminded her what it felt like to be present, to be herself. Within a year, she had started selling her pottery at local markets. The people she had been so anxious to please became background characters in a story where she was finally, unmistakably, the protagonist. You deserve to be the protagonist of your own life, but that role requires you to stop auditioning for roles in everyone else's story. Part 5. Protecting your peace, the non-negotiables. Peace is not a luxury. It is not a reward for when you finally earn the right to relax. It is a prerequisite for everything, for productivity, for creativity, for love, for health, and for joy. And protecting it requires real, practical boundaries. Let's talk about what those actually look like. Boundary 1. Limit your information diet. Social media is, for many people, one of the primary sources of anxiety about what others think. The curated highlight reels of people's lives on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn create a constant low-grade hum of comparison and self-doubt. A 2022 study from King's College London found a direct correlation between heavy social media use and heightened sensitivity to social rejection. The more time people spent scrolling, the more approval-seeking behavior they exhibited offline. This doesn't mean you need to delete every app, though for some people that is genuinely the right move. It means being intentional. It means unfollowing accounts that make you feel small. It means setting time limits that you actually enforce. It means recognizing that the highlight reel is not reality and choosing not to measure your behind the scenes by someone else's carefully curated front stage. Boundary 2. Stop explaining yourself. No is a complete sentence. This is one of the simplest and most radical pieces of wisdom available to us, and almost nobody believes it until they experience it. When you decline an invitation, you do not owe anyone a lengthy justification. When you change your mind, you do not need to write an essay explaining your reasoning. When you choose to prioritize your own well-being, you are not required to make that choice palatable to everyone who might be inconvenienced by it. Over-explaining is a form of preemptive apology. It says, "I'm sorry for having this need. Here is my evidence that the need is legitimate." But your needs don't require evidence. Your choices don't require defense. The more you over-explain, the more you signal to yourself and to others that you don't quite believe you have the right to make them. Practice the short version. "I can't make it, but I hope you have a great time. I've decided not to do that, but thanks for thinking of me. That doesn't work for me." And then, this is the crucial part, stop talking. Let the silence be there. Resist the urge to fill it with justification. The silence is not awkward, it is dignity. Boundary 3. Create space from energy drains. In every social circle, in every family, in every workplace, there are people who consume energy rather than create it. People who consistently criticize, complain, catastrophize, or compete. People who leave you feeling smaller after every interaction. People who seem to have a sixth sense for your insecurities and an instinct to poke them. You cannot always eliminate these people from your life. Sometimes they're family, sometimes they're coworkers. But you can reduce your exposure. You can limit conversations to practical topics. You can choose not to share the things that matter most to you with people who have repeatedly shown you they will not honor them. You can create physical and temporal distance when possible. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher whose Meditations has become one of the most widely read texts in personal development across the world, from business schools in Chicago to philosophy circles in Seoul, wrote something that cuts right to the heart of this. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Protecting your peace sometimes means stepping back from the insanity, even when, especially when, the insanity is comfortable and familiar. Boundary 4. Return to your body. When we are trapped in the spiral of over-caring, we live almost entirely in our heads, in the imagined conversations, the hypothetical judgments, the anticipated reactions. One of the most immediate and powerful ways to break that spiral is to return to your physical body. Exercise, not because you should look a certain way, but because movement metabolizes stress hormones and grounds you in the present moment. Meditation, not because you need to achieve some enlightened state, but because sitting quietly with your own thoughts, even for 10 minutes a day, reminds you that you are the observer of those thoughts, not their prisoner. Deep breathing, cold showers, walking without headphones, cooking a meal slowly. These are not indulgences, they are medicine. Research from Stanford University's psychology department has shown that even 20 minutes of vigorous physical activity significantly reduces activity in the brain's fear response centers, including the amygdala, which is the region most associated with social anxiety. Moving your body literally calms the part of your brain that is most activated by the fear of judgment. You already have access to one of the most effective anxiety treatments in the world. It's called going for a walk. Part 6. Freedom, what it actually feels like. I want to paint you a picture of what's on the other side of all this work, because I think sometimes we understand the problem intellectually, we understand the solution intellectually, but we can't quite picture the destination, and that makes it hard to stay motivated for the journey. Freedom from overcaring doesn't mean you stop feeling. You will still feel embarrassed sometimes. You will still care when someone you love is disappointed. You will still notice the sting of criticism. These are human experiences, and you don't want to be the kind of person who is entirely immune to them. That's not freedom, that's disconnection. What changes is the grip, the iron grip that other people's opinions have had on your decision-making loosens. You begin to notice that you can feel someone's disapproval and still act in alignment with your own values. You begin to notice that you can sit with someone's disappointment without immediately trying to fix it or erase it. You begin to notice that the world doesn't end when someone doesn't like your choice. And gradually, over time, you begin to develop a relationship with yourself that is so solid, so grounded, so genuinely kind that the external noise, while still audible, no longer has the power to conduct the orchestra of your life. Think of Michael, a 47-year-old accountant from Seattle who spent 20 years building a financially stable but deeply joyless career because it made sense and people respected it. At 45, he started secretly writing fiction, fantasy novels, the kind he'd loved since childhood. He was convinced it was ridiculous. He was convinced people would laugh. For 2 years, he wrote in his car during lunch breaks so no one would see. Finally, he shared his first completed manuscript with a small online writing community. The response was extraordinary, not because he was immediately famous, but because people connected with his story. He published independently. He built a small but devoted readership. He's not a bestseller. He still works in accounting, but he told a podcast interviewer recently, "I feel like I woke up. For the first time in decades, I feel like I actually showed up to my own life." That is what's waiting for you. Part 7. A message to you, right now, where you are. I want to speak directly to you for a moment. You have been so good at taking care of everyone else. You have been so skilled at reading the room, at anticipating needs, at smoothing things over, at making sure everyone is comfortable. You have practiced these skills for years, possibly decades. And in all of that time, while you were becoming the expert at managing everyone else's world, who was managing yours? This is not an accusation. This is an invitation to redirect some of that extraordinary energy you've been pouring outward and to pour it back into yourself. Not selfishly, not at the expense of others, but in the way that a plane instructs you in the event of an emergency to put your own oxygen mask on before helping the person beside you. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot be fully present for the people you love if you are running on empty. You cannot create your best work if you are paralyzed by fear of judgment. You cannot build the life you were meant to build if you are too busy trying to live the life someone else imagined for you. The version of you that exists when you stop caring too much, that version is not less kind, less loving, or less connected. That version is more authentic, more creative, more energized, more genuinely present, more deeply capable of real love and real contribution. That version of you is not far away. It is not hidden behind years of therapy or decades of hard work. It is right here, right now, waiting for the moment you decide, really decide, to let it out. Let's bring this full circle. We started with a question. When was the last time you made a decision that was entirely yours? Here is my challenge to you, the action you take today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Identify one decision, one choice, one conversation that you have been postponing because of fear of judgment. It doesn't have to be enormous, it can be small, but make it real, make it yours, and then take one step toward it. Send the email, make the call, write the first paragraph, book the appointment, say the words, Wear the thing. Order what you actually want. Just one step, one tiny act of choosing yourself. And notice what happens. Notice that the sky doesn't fall. Notice that you're still standing. Notice that in that small act, something shifts, something loosens, something that felt like a permanent constraint reveals itself to be, as it always was, simply a choice. You have spent enough time living for the gallery. It is time to paint for yourself. Your peace is worth protecting. Your freedom is worth fighting for. Your life, this one, unrepeatable, breathtaking life, is worth showing up for. Stop caring too much about what the world thinks of how you live it. Start caring deeply about actually living it. The world will adjust, and more importantly, so will you.